Hey, Hound Dogs, I'm David Hankins.
I'm Paul Hankins.
And welcome to On the Air with Power Squared. This week we're having a special guest, Steve B., a comic book creator and also a partner at Artithmeric, is here to talk about the Kickstarter that's going on now on Kickstarter. So welcome to the show, Steve.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking the time to speak.
We met through Artithmeric, and I didn't realize initially that you were. I forgot how we got involved with Artithmeric. I don't know if we found you guys.
Me too.
Yeah. But I remember after the first 5 issues came out, there was a message on Instagram from you, and I was really excited because, hey, somebody's noticing that we're out there, and we're very complimentary about the first 5 issues. And then I later found out you were actually part of the company, but it was still meant a lot to me at the time.
Well, I have to say, I think the books are very good. I've been a fan, as you know, from the first time I saw them. So really glad that we've met up and been able to work together a bit. And now we've got this Kickstarter coming. So for me, it kind of completes the circle on that. So I'm really pleased we've got here.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about your background. We like to, have you always been an artist?
Well, yes and no. I've been a published cartoonist since I was 16. It's a long time. In fact, a hell of a long time in my case. But it's so I've always had my cartoons published, and there's never been a week or a month since then that I've not had stuff published somewhere or other.
Wow.
But that's not been my main job. I mean, a lot of people who know me, to be honest, think I'm a full-time cartoonist because that's all they ever see me doing. I think my grandchildren all think I'm a cartoonist, but God knows where they think I get this house from. It's all the cartoonists I know, a bit like me. I know quite a few cartoonists over here in the UK. Most of them have got regular jobs as well, because very, very few people make a living from cartooning. Although I've had, I've made some good income from it over the years, paid for our holidays, that kind of thing. But I've had my cartoons published in magazines and things, for mainly financial magazines, because I was in a financial business. I've had a separate career to all of this, where I've earned my money really, but. I'm still working now.
Yeah, well, we're going to get you. You're going to get you a real job, but.
Well, no, I mean, my real job is that I draw cartoons, and I've drawn them all my life. And I've been lucky enough to have them published. I always thought the best thing that could ever happen would be that I'd have a regular cartoon strip in a national paper over here.
Right.
And when that finally happened for me, it was okay, but I wasn't really that impressed. If I'm being, I didn't mind doing it. But when you finally get something you really want, and then you think, actually, why do I want that? And it was just another cartoon strip for me. And in the end, I'm not saying I was pleased to do it, but it wasn't really what I was expecting, and it didn't pay very much. But I for a while, I was for a longish period of time, I was working for a business over here called Financial Times. For my cartoons, I mean.
Right.
They run business magazines, and I was working for them in my spare time doing cartoon strips. And at one point I was doing 5 regular cartoon strips a week, but all for different separate weekly magazines.
Wow.
And newspapers, which was the equivalent of doing one a day, obviously. And I found it hard work. I did that for 16 years, and but my real passion over the years had been the ad lib comic strips I did for my friends, particularly when I was at school, and people I worked with, and I've had a lot of fun with drawing cartoons and that. So it's been a big part of my life. But where I am these days, I thought I was going to retire 3 or 4 years ago, 3 years ago really, and the business that I'd set up back in 2008, we got it ready to sell, and we sold it, and at that point I was expecting to retire, and Andrew Copeland, you met him. We met through a mutual friend, and we were going to set up a conference speaking company, because a lot of stuff I used to do was conference speaking and financial services. So I was involved in that for decades really, and Anyway, we were going to set up a business running conferences in London, really, and we had a couple of meetings, and we turned out that we were both interested in cartoons and comics and comic strips, in particular comic books. And after our third meeting, we decided to set up a comic publishing company instead, which is where we are today. And Andrew's doing it. He's a lot younger than me. He was doing it because it's something he really wants to get involved in. I was doing it for something to do in what would have been my retirement. So it was my retirement project, if you like.
Right.
And I remember we used to meet up in London in a place called Leadenhall Market, where I used to work, where my business was, and we used to meet in the M Bar Cafe there, which is where the Harry Potter films are filmed. Lovely, picturesque place. And we were talking there, and we decided to set up a comic book publishing business to help really youngsters get their comic books published, one at a time, print on demand, that kind of thing, and maybe even hardback books, which is kind of where we are now, 3 years later. But we were up there one day having a coffee and a couple of bacon sandwiches, that sort of thing, and we decided that we needed a name that nobody had ever heard of before, so we decided to make up a word that no one had ever used in the entire history of the English language.
Right.
And after about an hour between us, and we really don't know how we did it, but we came up with Artithmeric, which I know you called Artithmeric because of the way you speak, where you live, which to us sounds weird, but I'm sure we sound weird to you. But it was kind of like arithmetic, if you like, but with art at the front. So Artithmeric, as you say, Artithmeric. We looked it up on Google, and we couldn't find it anywhere. We even did deep searches. There was absolutely no reference to it anywhere in the whole cyberspace.
That's why it comes up on spell check every time.
What we hadn't anticipated was that hardly anybody in the world would be able to spell the bloody word. But it's really hard for people to find us because of that. But we were able to buy all of the domain names and URLs and all that thing because no one had ever used the word ever. So it made it easier than calling ourselves Orange or something like that. Yeah. Which people have been doing lately. So we came up with a word no one had heard of, and which people still struggle with now. But we're if you look, if you search on Artithmeric now anywhere, everything you'll find relates to us because not only were we the first people to use it, nobody else in their right mind would use it anyway. So everything you find with that word attached will be to do with us. Having said that, it's been fun. We set the business up. We bought some pretty good printing equipment. We've some lovely machines, and we've got some people working for us, and we're all going. Everything was going really well. And then the company that I sold, the people who bought it asked me if I'd stay on as a director. So I'm still there. So I reached my retirement spot, and I was just going to be doing Artithmeric as my retirement job, and I've ended up with 2 jobs in retirement instead of none, which is what you're meant to do. So,
but I mean,
in my next life, I'll have a better go at retirement.
Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about you've been working in pensions since 1972.
That's right.
And you call yourself, I assume you call yourself the pension guru.
Well, that's what I was called. I ran a website called Pensions Guru for about 15 years, and that name stuck. We were pretty influential. We had like 500,000 downloads and that sort of thing. It was an enormous site over here, and I became quite well known in the industry because of that. So, but I actually invented a little cartoon character called Pensions Guru, and the website kind of centered around him. So he became quite famous too. So my alter ego is a cartoon character, a bit like Spider-Man, Peter Parker.
So in America, most people don't have pensions.
You have 401ks over there.
Right. So you actually, this is actually pensions, not Social Security or something like that.
No, that's right. It's private pensions. So I wouldn't recommend it to anybody else, but I know more. I used to. These days I'm a bit out of touch, but I knew more about pensions than is good for anybody, to be honest. Bad for you to know as much as I did. It's an unnecessarily complicated subject around the world, but particularly in the UK, where we've got insultingly complex legislation produced by a generation after generation of quite incompetent government people. So that's good for somebody like me who could explain things simply, to be able to explain the nonsense they keep coming out with, and I made a career out of it.
So, I mean,
and also a pretty good comic strip, to be honest.
So is it how to invest your pension, or just
well, not really. On? No, I was for my sins, I was a specialist in legislation.
Okay.
So I spent most of my time with politicians and government, prime ministers, people like that. Again, I wouldn't recommend it.
Well, it's nice to know that there's a universality that nobody thinks government workers know what they're doing. Well,
I don't know about your government, but I mean...
Oh, no, it's true here, too.
You couldn't come up with a worse system for pensions here if you tried.
Okay. So, you've recently published, you're a comic book creator, you've recently published Buffalo Bill Amos Rides Again.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
I've been seeing those being drawn for quite a while. How long did it take you to actually complete that? I know you got 2 other jobs, so.
Well, I mean, what happened? When I was at school, I drew all the people in my class at school and the teachers and things like that. And one of my friends was called called Bill Amos, and I drew a comic called The Adventures of Buffalo Bill Amos, and I think we did 6 or 7 of them, where I drew them and they were photocopied and everyone in the school saw them, unfortunately including the teachers, because I wasn't right about them. And and so I was mildly famous at school, but Bill became far more famous than I ever did, and the name stuck with him really throughout his life. And 5 years ago, we were out having a beer somewhere with a few old friends, and somebody said, why don't you revive the character? I mean, I haven't drawn it for over 40 years, and so Buffalo Bill Amos Rides Again. I don't know why, but I decided to draw it. It spiraled a bit out of control because I wrote some stories out, which I try and do a better job than I did when I was so young when I did them before. I was quite young when I did it, so I came up with some stories. But anyway, the bottom line is I've come up with enough stories to do 12 28-page books.
Wow.
And for some reason I told my friends, I still see most of the people that I used to know when I was young, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 12, 18, that kind of age.
Uh-huh.
And I said I'd produce 1 book a month during 2022, and so far I'm on target. So we're just having a bit of fun and doing stuff. I mean, it is really just for myself and my friends, but including you, it's got a bit of a worldwide audience. It's weird when you think it really is about a bunch of people that knew each other 40 years ago.
So, but it's a Western?
Yeah, that's right. We lived when we were young. We lived in a place called Collier Row, which is was near a place called Romford in London, the borough of London, Havering. Okay. And in the original books, I set it in Collier Rio, not Collier Row, and the whole thing was, I imagined us all at school there living a life broadly based on the Western comics and pulp Western films that we used to watch at the cinema back in the 60s. A genre that's always fascinated me, and so it's kind of our life reimagined through that kind of filter of pulp Western.
So you're a character.
I mean, it's not going to sell that. It's not going to become a worldwide bestseller. I do know that.
Yeah, well, you never know. Maybe this show will launch it and be huge.
It probably won't. You know that.
Well, it hasn't launched ours, so.
It's fun to do, though. I mean, like you. I mean, it's creating comics is. It's what I do. It's what everyone I know, by and large, that's what they do.
Yeah.
It's fun.
So you were mentioning westerns. I was going to ask you, is that it's the film westerns that you've been watching? I mean, you were from the time you're talking about spaghetti westerns, or are they?
Well, no, well, yeah, I like those. But I mean, you have to. I mean, we didn't live in a colourful world like you did. You live in America. If you lived over here in post-war Britain, when I was born in the 1950s, it was very black and white here. And our TV was black and white until 1970, 72.
Right.
So austerity after the war. It was a drab place to live. Collier Row was out in the middle of nowhere. The comic books that I read, and particularly the Marvel comics, the Atlas comics to start with, and Rawhide Kid, Kid Colt, Two Gun Kid. Those, I mean, I loved Marvel comics, still do, but the westerns just sparked my imagination. We used to go to the cinema and watch Saturday morning pictures, and they were black and white. Everything was black and white here. So colour for me was the comics, and my introduction to Marvel comics when I was like a 10-year-old was a revelation to me. Something that never left me, really.
So are you a character in Wild Bill?
I am a character in the Buffalo Bill Amos comic, but you never see me. I'm the two-nib kid, the cartoonist who's framed him in the first book, and he spends all 12 books trying to catch. I'll tell you now, I won't give away any secrets, but in the 12th book I escape, and it opens up the chance of another 12-book series if the world continues.
So you must be working on this book constantly if it's one a month.
I do about put it this way, my life is nothing different for me now than 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. I draw for about 4 or 5 hours a day, and I always have. So I'm going to be drawing something. All I've done recently is shift most of that drawing to fulfilling these books. So I draw maybe 4 or 5 hours a day. I draw a couple of hours every morning, and most evenings, most nights.
Wow. And
but that's, for me, everyone here, my wife, if she was here now, she would say I'll probably do a lot more than that. But I draw all the time. I always have, and I've not done it to make money. I've done it because that's what I do.
Now,
and I even did it when I had a pretty busy career, to be honest. I mean, most of my cartoon strips I did when I was traveling around the country were done in airport lounges, train stations, on trains. I'm very good at drawing while things are moving. I can draw on a train. I've done whole cartoon strips between here and Edinburgh on the train.
Now, you're totally pen and paper kind of guy.
Analog.
Well, I used to be until 5 years ago. I'd never drawn on anything other than pen and paper. But I had the amazing good luck back in, I think it was 2016. It might have been 15 actually, 15 or 16. That I got caught up with a company called Plask, Plasq, and they were introducing a digital art program. I mean, I tried Photoshop, to be honest. Like everybody said, you get into Photoshop, you want to do professional cartoons. I really couldn't get on with it. I bought, it cost me 800 quid to buy it and all that sort of stuff. But I just thought it was so clunky, so hard to use. It wasn't intuitive. You take you like half an hour to do a word balloon. I just thought it was nonsense, absolute nonsense. In fact, I just thought it was absolutely no use at all for somebody who wanted to use it for creative purposes. But the guys at Plas came up with something called Comic Draw. And to cut a very long story short, because I can do long stories any day of the week if you want them, but to cut one short, they asked me if I'd be a beta tester of their program. So I managed to get in at ground level on that. And a few of the things I suggested with a lot of other really good people that I met there, we influenced the app, and the app was finally launched, and I didn't have to buy it. They gave me a free copy, and I've never looked back. I now never draw on anything other than my Apple iPads with my iPencils, and I never use anything other than the Comic Draw app, which I find is really intuitive, really easy to use. You don't have to think about what you're doing. It does what you expect. It's not fancy. It's not doesn't got all the clever stuff that you get on something like Procreate. But I got a copy of Procreate because a couple of people said to me, you really should use Procreate because it's a kind of grown-up version of what you... I thought it was too much like Photoshop, too difficult, couldn't be bothered. Comic Draw for me is absolutely superb. You pick the pencil up and you draw. just like you, using pencil and paper. And I my pens are probably all dried up now. I've got a load of them here, but I don't use them. So after being a lifetime user of pencil and paper and pens and brushes, I now don't use them at all. I think the drawing on the iPad for me is apart from anything, it's far more convenient. You carry it around with you. You can be on an aeroplane or something, and you don't have to listen to the stupid films they put on or anything like that. You just get on with your drawings.
So I went to your website, steveb.com.
There's a work in progress at the moment.
Yeah. Because most of the stuff there doesn't go anywhere. But you have some other things that you've drawn. One of them being Captain Romford, which I assume now is got a better idea. It's in London somewhere.
Well, yeah, that's near here too. I mean, I still live roughly where I used to live. I just moved. I now live in a posher part of the town, really. But it's Captain Romford. Romford's a town around here, and Captain Romford is like Captain America, but he's based in Romford. And he works for the local council, and he's not very bright, but he's got a cat who's his sidekick, who's enormously clever. So, and for about 20 years that ran in the local paper here. So he's not world famous, but people around here know him. And when I get a minute, I'm going to do a new Captain Romford rides again, I think.
Yeah, there's because it says it's a work in progress. You also have Electrical Tourism.
Yeah, that's a book that I wrote, but I'm not happy with it, so I unpublished it. I'd like to draw it again, but draw it better.
Okay.
And that's a novel. That's like a real graphic novel. But after I'd finished it, I was unhappy with it. I published it anyway, and then I regretted it. So I'm thinking about that again. I'd still like to do the story justice. I didn't think I did a very good job of that. But to be fair, I'd only had the iPad a few weeks when I started doing that, and I drew it very quickly.
And then you've got a couple of books about, one's Pension Conversations, and one is Emma Levin, The Complete First.
Emma Levin, yeah, that's right. Yeah, she's they're both my finance ones. Pension Conversations was a strip that ran in the Financial Times Business Magazine. It was a weekly strip, and that ran from I think it was from 2003 to 2016, so quite a while.
Wow.
Long time for a weekly strip, anyway.
Yeah.
And when I started doing it, it was basically conversations between me and my wife and a few other people, discussing the inanities of the pension system in the UK. The editor at the time said, well, if we can do 3 of these, we'll be lucky, and we did it for maybe 14 years.
Wow.
We never did run out of stupid things to write about.
I don't know if you can hear that. I can hear dogs barking in the back, so we'll pretend those are hound dogs, but it's my neighbor's dogs barking. If you can hear those.
I'm surprised you can't hear my grandchildren. I've got a riot going on downstairs.
So let's turn this back to Power Squared, which is why we're here. So you've actually been reading it. You've read all the issues so far?
Well, I have. I was quite taken with it. I was convinced that you were going to costume the heroes up halfway through the series, and maybe you will. I don't know, but it's when I first read it, I thought it was different, and it. I think it has. It's a lot of merit. I know you've got the twin thing, which is for obvious reasons, and but it's. I think it's a cleverly written book, or series of books now, and good concept. I thought. You see so many. I know this sounds terrible. You see so many comic books, in around these days, and they kind of fall into categories. And that didn't fall into a category for me, and that's what I liked about it.
Oh, good. I think one of the things I like about the twins is they don't costume up when they use their powers. It's not. I don't know. They always seems kind of. They don't talk. I'm Batman kind of stuff either. They're just sort of. It just. They just use them kind of a deal. So they're not. They're uncostumed characters, and it's. We were on a podcast a couple of weeks ago, and everybody was talking about their comic books, and they were all post-apocalyptic, and I said ours is pre-apocalyptic, and it's not.
Well, that's right. It's uncategorizable. I do like that. I mean, I think it's original, which is probably
Well,
doesn't
thanks.
sound much, but that's quite a strong word, I think, for me to use. I think it's original.
Well, good. We the three of us, Paul and his brother Trevor and I, sort of came up with the idea of talking about what we'd want to. That twins weren't being used as main characters, and they were all trying to bring in some manga anime influence, and so it was yeah. I'm glad you like it like that. Let's talk about we're gonna put 13 out after the Kickstarter, so issue 13.
Speaking of
The Kickstarter, so let's talk a little bit about.
I mean, what you should edit this down when you put it out. I mean, all that stuff I've said so far, just ignore that and get on with this bit.
No, it's all part of the conversation we're having with you. So, Power Squared, a twin superhero drama. And what is you guys came up with the idea to do this, and tell us about what's the purpose of doing this.
Well, there are two things here. One is the market for comics is pretty much saturated. I mean, the mainstream comic market in the US and in the UK, where I am, kind of had its day when comic shops were invented, I think. I mean, there was a time that you buy your comics on the newsstand here, and I'm sure you did, we did, and then I think, I don't know when it was, maybe the 1990s. You probably know more than me, but everything started going through the nerdy comic shops, which is fine, which must have been useful, and it probably helped the mainstream comics get more money and be sure about their distribution, not worry about sale and demand, all that sort of thing. But I think we lost a lot with what I would call American comics and regular UK comics. I think we lost a lot with that, and that didn't happen in Japan, and it certainly hasn't happened in the rest of Europe, where comics have become mainstream, or they've remained mainstream in France, Belgium, Italy, Spain, Germany, everywhere else. So they're mainstream. You buy them in regular bookshops, you buy them in regular shops, you buy them in supermarkets, and everybody reads them, much in the way that people used to do with Marvel comics and DC comics all those years ago. But these days, hardly anybody reads Marvel comics. Everyone sees the films, everyone knows all that, but you won't find one comic book reader in 1,000 people these days, I'm sure. Probably not 10 in a million. I don't know. Very few people actually read Marvel comics, or could even name the current titles of Marvel comics, I'm sure.
Yeah. Whereas
there was a time when a load of kids did, and a load of people I knew did, and a lot of people did as they got older. In France and in mainland Europe, comics are big business. They don't call them comics, but they call them bande dessinée, BD, people BD as they call them. But you get some pretty diverse titles, and you get quite. There are some things that I've seen around. Your book's one of them. Your series of books, one of them, that I think would translate well. Not in terms of language, but translate well into that market. And so our idea here at Artithmeric was that because we've got something like 300 creators on the platform now, and we hope to have 1,000 one day, and we hope to make a profit one day. But we're
so do I.
Yeah. We're building the business at the moment. And we've met a lot of really good people, yourselves included, and within the group of people that we've met, there's a kind of smallish group where you look at the stuff and say, you know what, this would play well in France or Belgium, somewhere like that, where the comic book market is vast compared to the UK, and I'd say vast compared to the US. I think in the US now you've got mainstream comic books are being eclipsed by stuff that's being put out by Scholastic and people like that now. The whole nature of comics is changing in the US, and same here in the UK. And I do think that the BD markets in Belgium and France are important. And anyway, so our idea was that we would pick kind of the cream of the crop, if you like, the ones that we think have merit, and we would put our effort and money into helping take those and fund foreign language translations of them so that they could be on sale in Europe, in French, Italian and Spanish. That was our idea, because they're the three big markets. And yeah, I mean, we did it with Sean Hall's Dirk Brody books, which I think are wonderful.
Yeah.
And we're probably doing it with the Delegates books, Bin Lee and Tina Cecil Ward. And we'd like to do it with Powers Squared, which is why we're doing this Kickstarter. Let's see. But it's one step on the ladder. If we can get enough money together to fund a proper translation, not just a Google Translate piece of nonsense, but something done by chartered translators, a group of editors, we've got a whole group of people we put together to do this, and they're not cheap, and it's not cheap what you have done. And in their world, it's called a transcreation, because it's not a translation at all. It's it's an idiomatic translation, so quite different. And Sean had to go through some big issues of changing the names of his characters, which is not the easiest thing to do, because they don't play well in different countries, certain names. So we're a little way down that road, and we don't know where it's going to end up, but we do hope we'll end up with a range of books on sale in mainstream shops in France, Belgium, Italy and Spain, transcreated into the local languages by people who themselves are comic book fans. BD.
So Sean Hall's, is his available in France or
no, not quite? It's been translated. Our editors have finished with it. If we weren't busy today doing the Powers Squared Kickstarter, we would be doing a Kickstarter, not Kickstarter, but a crowdfunding piece with Sean's translated book on the Ulule.com platform, which is a kind of European version of Kickstarter.
Mm-hmm.
What we don't want to do is do so many things at once that we trip up ourselves here. So Andrew and I are quite careful. We don't rush. We don't. We're pretty laid back. We're very English about what we do. We're not trying to change the world or anything like that. But bit by bit and methodically, we look at the detail. You've met Andrew. He's a very detail-oriented guy. We do things at our own pace, and we piece by piece get things right. And so when we're through with this Kickstarter for you, which hopefully will raise the funds for doing our next Ulule, we'll get on with Sean's attack with us on the mainland Europe.
Okay. The beachhead. Okay.
So I mean, we're not rushing around, but by the end of this year, we hope to have 4 books in the French-speaking Franco-Belgian market.
Okay.
And one of them will be the first volume of Powers Squared, I hope.
I hope so too. So obviously you've done 3. Do you have the 4th one in mind, or is that a secret?
We do. No, it's not a secret at all. You may have seen Michael Cohen's Tangled River books, which I really admire. And he's already got an Italian translation of those because he lives in Italy. But we're again, we think we're not going to chase around. We're going to go ahead with our plan of we'll see how we get on in the French or the Franco-Belgian market. Then we'll see how we get on in the Italian market, and then we'll see how we get on. A translation like this, a proper transcreation of a book, is going to cost you somewhere between £4,000, £5,000, £6,000. Maybe there's a great deal of money. Now, we don't mind funding some of that ourselves if we think it has merit, and we're in business to not just make money, but to take chances making money, and we're quite happy to do that. We've already piled a load of money into this business, the two of us, so we're not averse to that. But if we can use crowdfunding, and we can get, particularly because you take a fan base with you, which we think that's a sensible way of a kind of jointly fan based through crowdfunding, and business based through Artithmeric. So that's our plan anyway. But
Okay.
our plans don't change that often, I have to tell you. We get together every few months and just set the next few months, and we're pretty good at sticking to the script.
Okay. Um, Now, we decided we had done a graphic. You guys had actually pushed us to do a graphic novel a couple years ago, and we used that as a for our own Kickstarter. And we thought we wanted to give some people, make it a little different than that one. So we went back and I want to say kind of re-edited the issues to make it
Yeah.
up. Did you guys like that, or was that?
Yeah, and it didn't surprise me you did it. I mean, I'm pretty sure that with my own work, I was looking back over some of my pension things, and if I could, I'd rewrite them all. But the fact is, you shouldn't really go back. But I think with this, it's different. You have the chance to sharpen up the language and to put some clever stuff in there. You're lucky because you've got complete control over the book. What you can't control is the artwork, and I know you've had a succession of artists working on it, but these days that's not unusual in not just mainstream books, but in indie books. So I think why not go back and redo it? I mean my first awful attempt at a graphic novel, Electrical Tourism, which you mentioned earlier, to my embarrassment, I will rewrite and redraw it, but as far as I'm concerned, it'll be the same book.
See, you got the advantage that you can actually draw. And we like working and actually working with Rachel, our current artist, and who's been there since.
Good art.
It's just,
Good
yeah,
art.
we think so too. But she also has training in sequential art that we don't have, and so she'll say, well, we should do this and this, or combine these panels, and a lot of it's very good at, it helps us, I think, make it better. So I think it's good to have somebody else looking at it that I'll say knows what they're doing.
I mean, that's the thing, really. Sequential art, graphic novels, whatever you call them, these it's more than just a string of pictures. It's not the pictures doing the work or the words. It's a it genuinely is, or certainly people in Europe think that comic books genuinely are a separate art form. So you can do things in comic books that you simply can't do in a written book, and you can't do in film. So films are an art form. So in fact, in Europe and here in the UK, comics or comic book form is regarded as the ninth art. It's often called the ninth art. And in fact, we call Artithmeric we subtitle that the ninth art.
Right.
So it is a separate art form along with poetry and everything else, and painting. And you can do things with comics that you simply with sequential art that you simply can't do in any other way. And you're right. You've got to use that. So many comics are just headshots. Just non. And the words and the pictures don't really work together. They work despite each other. And good comicking is when the two of them are seamless. Now, I think it's easier to do that if you do it as one person, a bit like a singer-songwriter, if you like.
Right.
It's easier for Bob Dylan to write a song because he's going to sing it than it is for a band to sing a song that somebody else wrote. But it's not to say it doesn't work. I think it's just a lot harder when you work in collaboration with others. I personally find it easier to work on my own, but then you are lacking a lot of the skills that other people could bring to bear. So
Yeah.
if you do it the way I do it, you've got to keep an eye on what other people are doing and understand quite a lot, not just about about the way the words work, the way the words work with the pictures, and the way one page works with another. I spend hours working on a page only to find it doesn't work with the page I've got next to it. So a two-page spread means something in a physical book, and I think you do need to. Some people who do that are just supremely talented, but some people really can't do it, and they don't even know it's being done. And you do see some awful comics around, I do think.
I think we've been very lucky to be working with her because, again, she does sort of, make it, I sometimes envy people that can do it by themselves because you can just sit down and, put one out pretty quickly. we have to obviously pay her to do it and pay Julia to color it and all that. But I think some cases, I think the collaboration kind of helps us too.
But I was going to ask you that, if you don't mind me asking, and if you do, I'll just shut up. But I mean, putting something together in the way you have, you've written it, and I know you do the. I think Trevor does the lettering, but you've there's a real expense to putting 13 books together, isn't there?
Yeah, and we're actually working on 21 at the moment. So
Wow.
yeah, we're way behind as far as putting stuff out.
I mean,
Yeah.
are you doing it to make money or try and get your money back, or
Oh,
you're doing it because you do it? I mean, I personally am doing it because I do it, but
Yeah.
it intrigues me that I'd love to find a way of helping people make serious money with, especially talented people, with comic books.
Yeah, it's I don't want to get into how much I pay everybody to do their
No, no,
stuff,
no,
but
no, quite.
it's not cheap. It's
But it's a serious investment, I guess.
yes, and I get the one thing I've gotten out of it so far is professional status at like Comic-Con. That which this saves me a couple $100 instead of. But yeah, I haven't.
That's something.
Yeah.
I mean, to some extent, to be taken seriously artistically, that's for a lot of people. They say, well, that's good enough. That's what I want.
I like working with, I'll say, Paul and Trevor as well, and I do like I like the people that we're working with, and I want to keep this going as long as we can. But I would like it if I could actually break even or something like that at some point, because it is an expensive proposition to do.
Yeah, I mean, you're not on your own. Our comic laureate over here, Rachel Wells, I think. I can't remember her second name. That's embarrassing. But anyway, I think it's Rachel Wells. But anyway, our current comic laureate, she did a 2-year report on the really the economics of self-publishing as it applies to comic books, and very few people make anything at all out of. Some people make a lot of money, but most people would be happy to break even. When Andrew and I set this business up, we were wondering if we could help people get involved in comics without the expense that goes along with it. Just printing one issue for $3 or $4. Professionally done, not a rubbish copy, but a decent copy. So we thought we were bringing something not new to the market because other people were doing those things, but something that would help people get themselves to a point where they could publish and show people the finished effect without going to great expense of printing hundreds or even thousands of copies.
Yeah, I've never wanted to have like a garage full of issues I haven't sold, but I got it down to $1 an issue or something like that. Paul's doing something on the computer, kind of threw me there. So how I know that you were how much were you involved in the decisions about what goes into the Kickstarter?
Right. The relationship between me and Andrew is quite. He thinks my opinions are interesting, but I should keep them to myself.
Okay.
We've got a whole creative team working for us. Andrew's in charge of that, and I wouldn't presume to tell them what to do. In fact, they make my work look good, so I'm happy to work with them.
You were very centered to kind of picking the covers that we chose.
Oh well, things like that are important. I think I've probably got a better eye for that than Andrew has.
Okay.
I hope he doesn't watch this. Actually, he won't watch this. He's too busy, far too busy to watch them.
So have you seen the Kickstarter page?
Oh yeah, no, of course,
Okay.
no. We decided that because we're both strongish characters, you can't have two bosses on a project. So I work with Sean, and he's working with you. So that's kind of.
I see. Okay, so that's fine.
Okay. Otherwise, we'd end up running all over each other, and it just wouldn't work.
So, do you have a favorite tier or item?
Oh, the one I've already chosen, the one that I'm going for. If that's what you want to know.
Sure. What is
I
it?
think it's £100. No, it's the one with the books and the fine art print and the comics to go with it. So it's not the full set, but that I think it's $100. Is it $100? I don't know.
Yeah, we don't have it up in front of us. We did a show last, I guess, Friday night, walking through the Kickstarter and talking about the various tiers.
Yeah.
But they were in pounds.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So it didn't.
Well, we still use those over here.
Oh yeah, I know.
Quite
No, but it was just sort of like, I really don't know how. It's a little closer to 1-to-1 than it used to be, but I
yeah, I mean, well, yeah. Don't tell me about that.
Sorry. Is that part of the pension fund?
Well, no. I should. I should have turned all my money into dollars 20 years ago. I know that.
Well, there was. I worked for a company that was now I think defunct, but they were trying to get people in like Britain they wanted to bill them in pounds as opposed to dollars at the time, and that was like in the 80s, and so I think things have sort of changed since.
Well, I think it's probably $2 to the pound then, wasn't it?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, it was like $1.75 or something. It was
just after the war, by the way. I mean, a long time ago, I know, but it was $4 to the pound over here.
Yeah. Oh, I see. So yeah.
So things have only gone one way for us, and badly, really, and it continues.
Okay. Well, sorry to hear that.
Well, there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, if you live here, it's fine. It's just if you. I mean, I've been to America loads of times. We did try once to go to every state in America, but we didn't quite manage it. My wife and I and some friends, but we've probably been to more states than most Americans have been to.
Probably.
But we our money I mean, quite frankly, we should have done it years and years ago because our money went further then.
Yeah, you could probably,
Yeah.
So, okay, so the last question we always ask people is, if people wanted to get a hold of you, how would they, follow you, what would be the best way to do that?
Oh, well, follow me personally on Instagram, which I think you may do, where I'm Steve B. Cartoons. But follow Artithmeric really on and we're on everything with Artithmeric. But if you follow, it'd be great if people follow me. I don't mind that. But if you follow Artithmeric, I mean, we've got so many great creators on there, and we're getting more and more all the time. It's quite an impressive group of people, and we're quite. It's something we're quite proud of actually, and it's an eclectic group as well. So and we do hope it will grow. We'd like it to be 3 times its current size within the next year, and we're working hard to try and do that. It just doesn't look like we work hard, but we do work hard.
Are you recruiting people? I mean, how do you find people?
No,
or they find you?
We approach them and we tell them what we do, and if they're interested, that's good, and if they're not, that's good too. We're not pushy, as you know. We want to work with people that want to work with us, but where we do find people that we can work with, we'd like to try some different things, like we're doing here with trying to break into the French market.
Is it one of the things I was curious about? I mean, I know Sean and Tina and Ben, and we're here in the United States, and you're telling me Tangled River, the guys in Italy. Is there? It seems like there's not any British comic books that are your top of your list, I guess. Is that?
Well, there are. We just haven't got around to them yet.
Okay.
So yeah, there are, and we've got some good people in the Far East and in Australia. What we do with that, because we had to build the program for people to upload their comic, their artwork into our system. So we give everybody who joins Artithmeric, we give them a piece of software, or access to a piece of software that, quite frankly, took us out the first 2 years of the business to put together, and it's still being built now. A superb piece of software where everybody gets their own online studio, and they can manipulate the comics and edit them, publish them, unpublish them, merchandise, all those things, and they get their own URL, their own shop front, and we built all the financing behind that, the purchasing and distribution, and so we did all of that. And it doesn't sound very much, but it is really, really hard to match a kind of accumulation software into print production software, and that's where Andrew and some of the people that he worked with in the past, they're world-class experts. So we've built that. So it means that our platform can plug into other printers around the world who can use our output from our platform. So, for instance, when we distribute comics in North America, we print them in North America, where we print here in our own factory in just outside of London here, and we also print in South Africa, and we're looking to print in mainland Europe, and we're currently talking to people in Australia about having printing facilities there. So we're trying to have broad appeal. But what I'm particularly looking for, artistically, I'd say, is looking for the kind of off-the-wall, slightly different, not run-of-the-mill stuff. So the kind of stuff that's not easy to categorize, and we're finding lots of that everywhere. We're talking to a couple of people in Southeast Asia who've got some beautiful books that we'd love to bring to market and bring to the European market.
Okay. You have any questions?
No.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else you want to add about the Kickstarter or anything, or besides back it?
Well, we're going next week, and Kickstarter's a thing of itself. I would like to be able to one day look at Kickstarter as a market in itself, rather than just a vehicle for accessing people you already know. If you look at the total comic book sales generated through Kickstarter over the last 5 consecutive years, the numbers have gone up tremendously. I know that's because 1 or 2 high-profile actors have had comic book endorsements. So that's obviously that warps the market a bit. But even allowing for that, you see a steady growth. That I've come to regard Kickstarter itself as a market. Possible, so how do we approach Kickstarter as a market? And a lot of the stuff Andrew and the team have been doing here have been trying to, and with the help of Kat, your friend. I've not spoken to her, but I know she's been working with Andrew, and maybe seeing how we can tailor what we do to appeal to a slightly broader base of Kickstarter users, for want of a better word. People that are comfortable using Kickstarter. So I'd like to see if we could develop something along those lines this year.
Okay. Well, thanks very much for being on the show.
Pleasure.
All right. So I'm David Hankins.
And I'm Paul Hankins.
Until next time, you've been on the air with Power Squared.